Y'all check this out. The last video was the front end on the 83 Big Red, and that's it sitting right there. Now I made a managerial decision on that bike, and I'll tell you what I did. I went ahead and put new brake shoes on it, so it's rideable and safe. But I went one step that I normally don't take, and I welded these lowers to the uppers. Here's my reasoning on it. First, these are unfixable. You saw one had a broken spring, it come out in two pieces. All of the urethane bushings inside were just completely rotted out and gone. This front end was trash from a standpoint of repairing it. The chrome was completely wore off of these. They were rusted. You can't who's gonna re-chrome 8 inches of the fork? They're just not worth fixing. So with that being said, instead of grafting on another front end, instead of putting it back together and it not just, it not working anyway, why not go ahead and weld it solid, do a good job, make sure it's square and true. And that's what I ended up doing. And I took it even a step further. I added 1 inch of lift on the front end of this bike, measuring from the bottom to this bolt right here that holds the rack on is 17 inches. Factory should be 16 inches, give or take, depending on how much sag you have over the years. I don't have an unridden bike to really know what that's supposed to be, but that should be 1 inch over factory. So that's 17 inches from the bottom of the shock to the bolt that holds the rack on. And I think it's a good height. It's a good height for this bike. It's it's not a big mudding bike or anything like that, but it does give a nice stance to it, and it didn't cost anything. I know a lot of you guys out there, y'all run into problems and you go on the internet and you try to find a cure for your solution, and I do that. I think that's really, kind of how YouTube started, was people sharing ideas, sharing fixes and repairs on things. And so if you have a welder and you're decent at welding, I would recommend that you could do this to get your bike back up and running. Is it restored? No. Is it the proper fix? Well, you can't fix what's here, so yeah, I'm gonna say it will pass. Ideally a 200M front end, which I do have one. I could graft this on there, but that's a lot more work. And in the future, what I'd like to do is to take a 200M front end, cut these rack mounts off and put on there to where you look at it and it still has the rack and the headlight, because you lose that, this configuration, if you go to a 200M setup. So to save this front end and to get a little further down the road with it, and I know a lot of you guys, that's where you find yourself, you don't have another 200M front end laying around, this is a good way to repair it. But I will advise you to clean your metal really, really good, get all the rust off of it, and be sure and line this fork up. You don't want to weld this and it have a kick up or kick back or something like that. And also take your axle and put in your lowers when you weld them, so that way it's straight and it's true to the tire. You go welding this on and you've got one side of this cocked one way or turned one way, it's never going to roll true, it's never going to roll straight. So if you're going to go to this step, and this is kind of a last resort, and I'll call it that, this is a last resort. If this is what you're going to do, when you weld it, be sure and weld it with the axle in place. You can leave the tire off and keep it out of your way, but put the axle, the hub, and the spacer and the brake and put all that on it. That way that the lower forks are square, they're parallel to one another, and when you put them on the upper, be sure that they're centered and they're straight. All in all, I like it. I would recommend running a little bit lower air pressure in that tire, because you've basically made it a rigid front end just to give you a little bit more suspension. But again, if it's broke, you don't have any suspension anyway, so you're really not losing anything. And those types of repairs, or workarounds as some people call them, is a win. It's not costing you nothing, you're not tearing anything up. As long as you're careful and you can weld, that's a safe repair. So there's a little update, and I think it turned out good. I think it gives the bike a good stance. It's big enough if you wanted to run a little bit taller tire, you could. I won't be, but your bike, you do what you want to do. But I think it turned out really good. I think that bike still has the right look and stance that it should have. It didn't cost me anything. It was a good opportunity to put brakes on it and show you how to take the front tire off. And it's and you can still service this front end now. I mean, you can still take that tire off, you can still put brakes on it. Welding these forks on did not stop you, or will not stop you, from servicing the bike. If you wanted to, you could take some of your shock boots, put on here, run up to the top, and zip tie them in place and cover them up and keep them protected. Weld these up and then let your shock boots come down. Just something if you wanted to. As you see, at this point it doesn't matter. I welded them solid all the way around. You're not going to get any water in there, so you're not going to get any rust or anything like that to develop, because they're not open to the elements anymore. Okay, well there you go. There's your update on the 83. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I'll see y'all next week. Y'all take care. Bye.